"Daddy, I brought you a present for Christmas," said the little girl, pointing at the Chinese widow. Before we dive into the story, don't forget to like the video and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. The snow had settled thick across the Colorado foothills by the time morning light reached the ridge. It was the heart of winter, and there was no drift, no shifting of powder, just a heavy, unmoving blanket that covered the roofs, the fence rails, and the open ground stretching toward the pines. The air carried the kind of sharp cold that made a man's breath sting on the way out. The ranch below the ridge looked small but steady, built from thick-cut pine boards that had weathered 3 winters and still held firm. Ethan Cole stepped out from a barn with a hammer tucked under one arm and a strip of rawhide hanging from his coat pocket. His beard was stiff with frost, and his shoulders lifted and dropped with each breath he pushed into the cold. He walked with the controlled pace of someone who knew how to work through harsh weather without wasting motion. Ethan had never been the kind of man who hurried unless danger pushed him. After 20 years as a U.S. Marshal, tracking killers, settling disputes, and burying too many memories, he now chose a life that required quiet hands and steady thinking instead of gunfights. He bought this land because it sat far from any saloon, rail line, or outlaw trail. He built the cabin because he wanted a place where his daughter wouldn't hear gunfire in the distance or see men dragged from the jailhouse. His mission now was simple: raise his daughter in peace and avoid anything that could bring violence back to his doorstep. He reached the barn door hinge and examined the crack left from last week's windstorm. The wood had split unevenly near the joint, and each time the door swung, it groaned. Ethan pressed his thumb along the break, studying whether it could hold another season or if he needed to replace the entire beam. His jaw tightened the way it always did when he worked through problems quietly. He lifted the hammer, drove a nail in, and listened to the way the sound bounced along the boards. Behind him, the cabin door shut softly, but he didn't turn. That sound belonged to Lily, and she had a very specific way of moving, quick, curious, always drifting toward something she wanted to explore. Ethan checked the tree line briefly and saw her small figure heading toward the creek again. Her coat hung open, and her scarf already sagged off one shoulder. He let her go but kept her in his mind. Her curiosity made her bright and spirited, but it also meant she wandered more than he liked. She had lost her mother at 4 years old, and since then, he had worked twice as hard to keep her world safe. That meant teaching her to watch the land, judge the weather, and stay within sight lines. Today, she pushed those limits again. Ethan planned to call her back once he secured the hinge. The snow crunched under his boots as he moved around the door to test the frame. He ran his hand along the edge, checking for loose fibers. The cold settled deeper into his coat, but he kept working through it. Hard labor kept him grounded. As long as his hands were busy, his mind didn't drift toward the old gunfights or the mistakes that followed him even out here. When he straightened and glanced toward the creek again, his breath caught mid-exhale. Lily was returning through the snow. But she wasn't alone. She held the hand of an unfamiliar woman, barefoot, shivering, and visibly close to collapse. Ethan stiffened. The hammer in his hand lowered but didn't drop. His feet shifted apart slightly, not in threat, but in preparation. His instincts sharpened in the way they used to whenever he approached a camp where he didn't know who was armed or desperate. Lily waved with her free hand. "Daddy," her voice carried across the quiet land. "I brought you a Christmas present." Ethan's jaw locked. He moved toward them slowly, each step steady and controlled, assessing the situation in the same methodical way he once evaluated crime scenes. The woman beside Lily was young, perhaps 25, with pale skin dulled by cold and exhaustion. She wore a traditional silk cheongsam, a vivid red that stood out starkly against the white snow, but the garment was torn at the hem and side, exposing the bruising along her ribs. Her hair, long and black, hung tangled across her shoulders. She clutched her arms over her chest, not modestly, but simply to trap what little warmth she had left. Her bare feet were red and raw, her legs shaking with each step. Every line of her posture signaled severe fatigue. Her eyes, dark and almond-shaped, tracked Ethan's movements closely, ready to react if he appeared threatening. Lily held onto her with both small hands, tugging gently to keep her upright. Ethan crouched the moment they reached him. Where did you find her? His tone was calm but edged with tension. By the creek, Lily said. She was so cold she could barely stand. She didn't have shoes. She needed help. Ethan rose at a controlled pace. His attention shifted fully to the woman. What's your name? He asked. The woman hesitated as if weighing whether answering him was safe. Mylin, she finally said, her voice brittle. How long were you out in this weather? 2 nights, maybe more. I ran when they killed my husband. Men were selling women. I didn't know where else to go. Her eyes dropped as she spoke. Her shoulders tightened and her breath shuddered from the effort of talking. Ethan noted each detail. The way she swayed slightly, the torn red silk, the faint marks on her wrist that hinted at bindings. She was telling the truth. He also knew she couldn't stay outside another minute without risking frostbite or worse. Ethan's thoughts moved quickly. Is she being hunted? Are the men who chased her close? Is bringing her inside safe for Lily? Can he turn away someone this close to death? The last question answered itself. He reached a decision the same way he approached every dangerous situation, with careful steps and full awareness of the risks. Follow me, he said. The cabin is warm. Mylin blinked in disbelief, then nodded once. She leaned slightly toward Lily for balance as the child led her toward the porch. Inside, the warmth hit Mylin instantly. Her body loosened in a way that showed how much pain she'd been holding back. She looked around the cabin as if unsure she was allowed to sit anywhere. Ethan shut the door and stomped snow from his boots. He removed his coat and hung it on the wall peg. The room was small but organized, with a stove, a table, 2 chairs, shelves lined with jars of beans, and Lily's drawings pinned along the far wall. Ethan pulled out a chair. Sit before you fall. Mylin lowered herself slowly, her fingers trembling as she adjusted the blanket Lily draped over her shoulders. Her breathing deepened slightly, the first sign of relief she'd shown. Ethan ladled warm broth into a bowl and set it in front of her. Take your time. Too fast will make you sick. Mylin lifted the spoon with both hands. Steam rose toward her face. She took a careful sip, then a second, each one bringing a small change in her expression. Relief mixed with disbelief that she was finally safe, even temporarily. Lily sat beside her, eyes bright. You can stay for Christmas, she said. Daddy won't make you go back outside. Ethan didn't interrupt. He didn't promise anything either. He simply watched the way Mylin held the bowl, the way she fought to keep her hand steady, the way she kept glancing at the door as if expecting someone to storm inside. Snow tapped lightly against the window. The fire crackled in the stove. And for the first time in a long while, Ethan felt the cabin shift from a silent shelter into something slightly warmer, an unexpected reminder that even after years of grief and isolation, life could place someone in front of him who needed protection more than he needed solitude. The cabin held a quiet warmth as the fire settled into a steady burn, its glow reaching the corners of the room where shadows lingered. Mylin finished the last sip of broth, her fingers still trembling from cold and hunger, and placed the tin bowl gently on the table. Ethan stood a short distance away, leaning one hand on the counter while he watched her closely, not with suspicion, but with the focused attention of a man who needed answers before nightfall. He saw the uncertainty in her posture and the instinctive way she kept the blanket tight around her shoulders, covering the ruined silk of her dress. Lily slipped off her chair, eager and curious, and hurried to her small box of pencils in the corner. She wanted to draw their new guest. Ethan caught her eye and gave her a look that told her to give them space. Lily sat on the rug instead, humming faintly and pretending not to listen, though every muscle in her small body leaned toward the table. Ethan pulled out the second chair and lowered himself into it with a slow, controlled movement. You're safe for now, he said, keeping his voice even. But I need to understand what happened before you came here. The land isn't as empty as it looks, and danger travels faster than snow. Mylin's hands tightened around the blanket. Her gaze flicked nervously between Ethan and the stove, as if grounding herself in the steady warmth before she spoke. My husband, Chen, and I lived near the canyon rim east of here," she said quietly. "We stayed away from towns. We only traded when we had to. A group of men passed through 4 nights ago. They weren't from around here. They had wagons and rifles. They wanted women." Her jaw clenched, and she paused to steady her breath. "They came into our camp before dawn. Chen fought them. They shot him. I ran toward the pines. I didn't stop until I reached the creek yesterday morning." Ethan listened without interrupting, his expression controlled but intense. Lily looked up from the floor, her face softening with concern. She crawled closer, placing a hand on Mai Lin's knee. Mai Lin flinched at the touch reflexively, then exhaled slowly and offered Lily a faint, grateful nod. Ethan continued. "How many men were there?" 5, Mai Lin answered. "One older, the others younger. They moved like they'd done this before. They weren't hiding it." Ethan's fingers tapped the table once. His mind moved through possibilities: outlaws, deserters, traitors, or men running from something worse. He had dealt with men like that back when he carried a badge. They didn't abandon their pursuits easily. "Did they follow you?" he asked, keeping his voice low so Lily wouldn't hear the weight behind the question. "I don't know," Mai Lin whispered. "I didn't hear horses after the first mile. I saw no tracks, but I didn't look back." Ethan leaned back in his chair, not because he was relaxed, but because he needed space to think without crowding her. He had to decide how much risk she brought to the ranch. If the men who killed her husband were still close enough to threaten them, every decision he made now had to protect Lily before anything else. He studied Mai Lin carefully. She wasn't lying. Her expression carried too many raw edges: fear that hadn't settled, grief she hadn't processed, and an exhaustion that went deeper than hunger. She wasn't a danger, she was a survivor trying to breathe. "Your feet," he said, shifting his focus. "They're frostbitten at the toes." He rose from the chair, moved to the shelf, and retrieved a small tin of salve. Mai Lin's eyebrows knit with confusion. Ethan knelt, setting the tin on the floor. "Let me see." She hesitated, instinctively drawing her legs in beneath the cheongsam, but Lily scooted forward. "Daddy helps people," Lily said plainly. "He fixed my hand when I cut it on the fence. He'll fix yours, too," Mai Lin exhaled, tension loosening just enough. She lowered her feet one at a time onto the small rug. Ethan's jaw tightened slightly when he saw the raw, cracked skin. He unscrewed the tin and applied the salve with careful strokes. His gloves were still cold from outside, and Mai Lin gasped quietly when his fingers brushed her skin. He paused. "Does it hurt too much?" "No," she murmured. "It only surprised me." Ethan continued with slower movements, his touch steady. He wasn't comfortable with the closeness, his shoulders stiffened and his breath shortened, but he didn't pull away. He had patched wounds before, but touching a stranger's bare skin after years of guarding his emotions made something inside him shift uneasily. When he finished, he wrapped her feet in strips of cloth and stood. "You'll walk better by morning." Mai Lin nodded once, her eyes lingering on him longer than before. She seemed to be studying the man who had shown her a kindness she hadn't expected. There was confusion in her gaze mixed with something heavier, recognition of safety she hadn't felt since before Chen died. Lily tugged Mai Lin's hand again. "You should see my drawings," she said, excitement bubbling up. "I made one of a horse with really long legs." Ethan cleared his throat. "Lily," he said, tone gentle but firm. "Give her a moment." Lily sighed dramatically and went back to her corner. Ethan turned to Mai Lin again. "You need rest. We'll decide what comes next when daylight's better." A small silence stretched between them. Not uncomfortable, just cautious. Then Mai Lin spoke in a voice almost too soft to catch. "Why did you help me?" Ethan didn't answer immediately. He had asked himself the same thing since she walked across the snow with his daughter beside her. He didn't want trouble. He didn't want strangers. He didn't want reminders of the violence he spent half a lifetime escaping. But he also knew what happened to people left outside in winter. "You were freezing," he finally said. "And my daughter trusts you. That's enough for now." Mylin lowered her eyes, the faintest tremor running through her shoulders. Ethan looked away quickly before the moment grew too heavy. He stirred the fire, added a few logs, and checked the latch on the door. Old instincts rose in him, the urge to watch the windows, keep the rifle close, and listen for anything that didn't belong in the snow. Outside, the wind pressed against the cabin walls. Inside, the presence of a scared woman and a hopeful child changed the air in ways Ethan didn't yet know how to handle. The night ahead would bring questions he wasn't ready for. But for now, the cabin held 3 people instead of 2, and that alone shifted the world in a way none of them fully understood yet. The fire burned lower as afternoon faded, its glow turning from bright gold to a deep orange that stretched across the cabin floor. Ethan checked the stove, fed in another log, and lowered the latch. He kept watch on the space around Mylin without making it obvious, noting how her breathing had steadied since eating. Lily sat with her, showing drawings one after another. Ethan stepped outside long enough to check the yard. The cold hit hard the moment he opened the door. Snow had settled again over the fence line, the kind that hid tracks quickly. He scanned the ridge, the tree line, and the frozen trail leading toward the creek. Nothing moved. Yet his instinct stayed sharp. Men who took women didn't usually give up after one chase. He returned inside, shutting the wind behind him. Mylin sat wrapped in a blanket with the kind of stiffness that came from trying not to show pain. Ethan could see she was still freezing beneath the torn fabric of her dress. He opened the wooden chest near the bed. Inside were spare shirts, blankets, and 2 dresses he had kept from Lily's mother. He paused for a moment, aware that touching those clothes always carried its own weight, then selected a soft linen underdress and a wool layer that would fit Mylin loosely. "These should do for now," he said, setting them beside her. Mylin brushed her fingers over the fabric, her face shifting from apprehension to a quiet gratitude. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You can wash up behind the curtain by the water basin. Lily, stay out until she's finished." Lily nodded quickly. While Mylin moved toward the basin, Ethan busied himself chopping vegetables for stew. He heard the slight clink of the basin, the rustle of fabric, and a soft hiss when cold water touched her skin. When she returned, she wore the clean clothes, her ruined red cheongsam folded neatly in her hands. She looked like someone who had survived something that should have killed her. "You'll sleep on the bed tonight," Ethan said. "I'll take the floor by the stove." "I can't take your bed," Mylin protested. "It's not a discussion," Ethan replied. "You're injured. You need real rest." Night settled fully against the windows. The wind pushed softly at the logs and walls. Ethan ladled stew into bowls. After dinner, Lily fell asleep beside the stove. Ethan lifted her gently, carried her to bed, and tucked her under the quilts. Mylin stood beside him. "Will you keep watch tonight?" she asked quietly. "Yes," he answered without hesitation. "Why help me this much?" Ethan looked toward the window where darkness hid anything that might be moving across the land. "Because my daughter walked you here," he said simply. "And because I'm not the kind of man who lets someone freeze when I can stop it." The room settled into stillness. Mylin lowered her head onto the pillow next to Lily. Ethan shifted slightly on the floor, alert but calm. Outside, the snow held every secret of the ridge. Ethan stayed awake long after the fire dipped to a softer glow. He sat with his back against the wall, rifle within reach. By the time the sky outside softened into the gray before sunrise, his neck ached, but he didn't shift until he heard Mylin pushing herself slowly upright. She noticed Lily still sleeping beside her, warm and unharmed. She caught sight of Ethan sitting by the stove and realized he had kept watch the entire night. "You didn't sleep," Mylin said. "Didn't need to," Ethan replied. He rose to his feet. "I'm checking the ridge before the sun climbs. Stay inside until I'm back." Outside, Ethan walked the perimeter of the property. Near the ridge, he crouched and examined the snow more closely. A single indentation, small, subtle, but too sharp to be natural, caught his attention. It looked like someone had stepped there hours earlier. Ethan followed the shallow line until it faded at the tree line. Whoever left it hadn't come near the house, but they had passed close enough to notice the smoke from the chimney. Ethan returned to the cabin with the information heavy in his mind. Inside, Lily and Mai Lin were preparing the table. Someone crossed the ridge, Ethan said, shutting the door. Only one set of tracks. Not a horse, not a wagon, just a single traveler. Lily's eyes widened. Are they coming here? No sign of that, Ethan said. But someone passed close enough to see this cabin. Mai Lin lifted a hand to her throat. Do you think it's one of them? It's possible, Ethan admitted. Or it could be a hunter. But I won't assume anything. I lived through too many raids and ambushes during my years as a marshal. I don't take chances anymore. Mai Lin's breath caught. If they come, what will you do? I'll do whatever it takes to keep this house safe. Ethan moved toward the shelf where he kept a small metal box filled with old martial tools. He lifted out a compact spyglass and a folded canvas map of the foothills. He spread the map across the table. This is the ridge line, Ethan said. And this is where you came from. The track I found was north of the fence. Mai Lin studied the map carefully. She pointed at a gap in the ridge where the canyon dipped lower. They came through here, she said. 2 nights ago, when they found our camp. They arrived from this direction. Ethan shifted closer. Are you certain? Yes, she said softly. They moved along the ridge to avoid leaving prints in the open. Ethan's jaw tightened. Then the track I found lines up too well to ignore. What did the leader look like? Ethan asked. Mai Lin's expression tightened. Tall, weathered face. He wore a coat with a black stripe across one arm. The younger ones listened to him like they were soldiers. Ethan paused. A stripe on the arm, he repeated. Did he have a scar across his chin? Mai Lin's eyes widened. Yes. Ethan set his jaw. His name is Barrett. He's a trafficker. Used to work with deserter gangs near the border. Men like him don't wander this far north unless they're running from something. He killed Chen, Mai Lin whispered. If Barrett is near, he's not alone, Ethan said. He travels with men who work for coin and don't care what trouble they make. If he saw smoke from the chimney, he might just avoid the place completely, or he might watch from a distance before deciding whether it's worth approaching. The storm arrived without warning in the middle of the night. The kind that pushed snow sideways and hammered the cabin walls hard enough to wake even the deepest sleeper. Ethan rose immediately, checking the door frame for drafts. Wind roared along the ridge. As the storm intensified, Ethan lit a lantern. The light revealed something new, a small bruise along Mai Lin's upper arm, shaped like fingers. Who grabbed you there? He asked. One of Barrett's men, she said. He pulled me toward the wagon. I broke free before they tied me. Ethan's grip on the lantern stiffened. If he touched you like that, he won't hesitate to return. Men who take women always notice when one escapes. They don't let that go. I know, she said. There's something I didn't tell you, Ethan said, voice firm. Barrett wasn't just moving women to sell. He was trading information. The kind outlaw captains kill for. Routes, troop movements. Before I retired, I intercepted a message that listed Barrett as a carrier. If he sees me, he'll know exactly who I am. And that puts Lily at risk, Mai Lin said quietly. Ethan nodded. If I let you help, it puts you in his path. It became my fight the moment he tried to take me, she said. I survived once. I can survive again. The storm ended just before dawn. Ethan opened the door carefully, scanning the yard. Fresh drifts covered every old footprint, but the ground looked disturbed near the fence line. He knelt and brushed away snow until he found a faint indentation, a boot print, fresh enough to trouble him. Someone got near the fence while the storm covered their steps, Ethan told My Lin when he returned. They're testing the land. Ethan opened the marshal's box again, pulling out a strip of leather and a pouch of iron tacks. We're going to make the outside look uninteresting. But if they come, we need to be ready. He handed My Lin his second rifle, an older Levy action. Ever shoot? Yes, she said. Chen taught me. Then you'll stay close and speak up if anything looks wrong. They spent the day preparing. Ethan taught My Lin how to secure the rope release for the door beam. Lily helped gather kindling, sensing the tension but kept calm by My Lin's steady presence. By late afternoon, the sky shifted into a pale yellow haze. Ethan scanned the ridge with his spyglass. For men now, he said. They're closer. My Lin joined him at the window. Are they Barrett's men? 2 of them match the descriptions. The others are new. Night settled fully. Ethan extinguished every lantern except one near the stove. He stood at the window, rifle in hand. It happened suddenly, a faint clink of metal from the fence. They're here, Ethan said quietly. My Lin moved immediately, guiding Lily to the hiding place behind the wood box. Stay down, she whispered. Don't move. 3 shadows appeared just beyond the yard. Ethan raised his rifle. The first man stepped forward, tall coat lined with a stripe. Barrett. He lifted a lantern high. I'm looking for something that belongs to me, he called, his voice cutting through the cold. A woman ran from my camp. Tracks led this way. Your business ends at the fence, Ethan shouted back without opening the door. Barrett laughed. Marshal Cole. Didn't expect to see you living like a farmer. You got someone inside, don't you? A woman in red silk. Ethan dropped the beam, securing the door. You won't touch anyone here. Give her back, Marshal. Barrett shouted. You know how this works. You keep someone who ain't yours, you risk blood. My Lin rose from her hiding place. He wants me, not your daughter. Stay down, Ethan ordered. No, she whispered, stepping closer. I'm not hiding while you put yourself in front of bullets meant for me. A gun cocked outside. Ethan moved instantly. Down, he yelled, shoving My Lin behind the table just as the window shattered. Barrett fired. Ethan fired back. A grunt of pain echoed outside. Chaos erupted, shouts, boots scrambling. Ethan fired again, hitting a second man as he climbed the steps. My Lin stayed low, covering Lily with her body as bullets struck the pine logs of the cabin. You think you can protect her forever? Barrett screamed. Longer than you'll stay breathing. Ethan retorted, chambering another round. A final burst of gunfire answered him, but Barrett's shots went wide. Ethan leaned toward the window, aiming carefully. He saw Barrett running toward the ridge, clutching his side. Cowards retreating, Ethan muttered. Is he leaving? My Lin asked, crawling forward. For now, Ethan said. But he's not coming back. I hit him. He won't last long in this cold. Ethan lowered the rifle. He winced, gripping his shoulder where a bullet had grazed him. You're hurt, My Lin said, rushing to him. It's just a scratch, Ethan said. It's over. Lily peeked up from the wood box, eyes wet but brave. Is it over? Ethan knelt and pulled her into his arms with his good arm. Yes. It's over. My Lin stood shakily, relief rushing through her. Ethan caught her arm and steadied her. You're safe, he said. She looked at him and felt the last barrier inside her crumble. Because of you, she whispered. Because you stood with me, Ethan corrected gently. He lifted a hand to her face, brushing a strand of dark hair away. She leaned into the touch. He kissed her then, slow and grounded, filled with everything he hadn't dared feel until this moment. She kissed him back, anchoring herself to the man who had given her safety when she had none. When they pulled back, Lily grinned sleepily from the blankets. Does this mean she stays forever? Ethan rested a hand on My Lin's waist. If she wants to. My Lin smiled softly, her hand covering his. I do. The storm clouds parted above the ridge, letting the faintest glow of moonlight spill across the cabin roof. Inside, the fear that had lived between the walls dissolved, replaced by warmth neither snow nor danger could touch. Ethan, My Lin, and Lily stood together in the quiet cabin. Not three people bound by circumstance, but a family formed by choice, survival, and the kind of love that lasts. This story reminds us that family is not always defined by blood, but by the people who stand beside us when the storms of life try to break us down. Ethan and My Lin were both broken by their pasts, but through courage and compassion, they found strength in one another to build a new future. It teaches us that true strength isn't just about fighting battles, but about opening our hearts to help others even when we are afraid. Love and forgiveness can heal even the deepest wounds, turning a lonely winter into a season of hope. What did you think of Ethan's decision to protect a stranger at the risk of his own safety? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this story, please don't forget to like and subscribe for more. Thanks for watching.